really gone through bad turbulence. And if I have, I've probably been passed out, because usually my go-to, and this is like from Glasgow airport, go through the terminal, and then I'll hit the bar. I don't know what the place is called, but they do like a really good breakfast, or like the best breakfast that you can do in Glasgow airport. So I'll get like a bagel or something like that, and then I'll get 2 double shots of Courvoisier. So and I don't know why, but I always book really early morning flights. So it was like 6 a.m. Me and my friend Eric were going to Berlin to shoot a music video.
Just the Romeo and Juliet one?
Yeah, it was Romeo and Juliet. So it's like 6 a.m. and this guy's bamming me up. Like, Eric, if you know him, we're on the way in the Uber, and he's like, mate, if this plane goes down, like, fuck it. And I'm like, because he knows me, you know? And I'm like, can you shut the fuck up for a moment? Like, just do me a favor and shut the fuck up. And we got there, and immediately, like, I was like, I don't care. I'm going to feel like less of an alcoholic if you neck these with me. So we both did 2 double shots of Courvoisier. We get on the plane, and immediately after takeoff, like, I'm good with takeoff if I have those two double shots. And then once we hit altitude, the girl comes over, and I'm like, hey, we're going to take 4 of Johnny Walker Black Label, those mini bottles each, and 4 of those mini wine bottles. She gives me this look, and I just look at her, and I'm like, I'm a nervous flyer. And she just starts laughing. So
how long is the flight from Glasgow to Berlin, though? It can't be more than a couple hours.
It's like 2 hours. So we touched down in Berlin, and it's like, I don't know, 11. I forgot my passport in like the tuck-in pouch in front of the seat next to me, and these people are speaking German. I've learned German now, so I probably would be able to speak to them, but at the time, it's like I was on a different universe. I'm at customs, and I'm like, no, like my passport's on the plane. Let me just run back, and I'll go get it. And then I start, like, not thinking, because I'm also under the influence. I start running back to the plane, and then 4 police officers are running after me. And they're like, no, like, we'll get it. And I'm like, all right. Like, I gave them my ticket. They come back with a passport.
Oh, good.
And the first time, or no, it was the second time that we were in Berlin, but I went through customs accompanied by 4 police officers. I thought that was probably the hardest shit I've ever done in my life, to be honest with you.
They weren't letting you out of their sight for the rest of the time you were in that airport.
Nah. And then and then the other guy, Julian, who we were shooting the music videos with, he picked us up, and he essentially had a case of Sternberg beer, which is like 80 cents a piece. And he's like, "Do you guys want a drink?" Like, oh God, I know how this is going to go. And I'm not really a big drinker unless I'm on flights. We could spend like the whole time just me like pissed on flights, like stories.
Well, I remember we were going, it would have been almost a couple summers now, we were going to a BBK festival in Spain. You ever been to that in Bilbao?
No, I was going to go to it though. Sufjan Stevens was playing one year.
Sufjan.
It's
beautiful. It's in the mountains, up in the hills.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
But yeah, we were going there, and the flight, we had to leave at 4 a.m. We had to go to the airport for 4 a.m. And the night prior, we went to drop off bags at like 1 a.m. because we kind of been out drinking. We were on Bugfest, so that was it started off badly.
Yeah.
We were like, oh, should we go out for a few drinks before we go back when we were dropping off his bag? And we were out until 2, and I was thinking it'll be fine, we'll sleep it off. Not realizing that we were only going to have like an hour and a half sleep. Woke up drunk, and then I had to go to the airport absolutely steaming, and it was no, never again.
I don't know why. I think I'm Greek, so we always try to find a deal, and I find that the cheapest flights, I always find myself flying out on a Wednesday, flying back in on like a Tuesday, Wednesday, like that middle of the week, because it's the cheapest deal. But then also the flight times. Night
flights are always cheap as well, aren't they? Like if you're going overnight, yeah. Which is even...
Yeah, red eye.
Yeah, it's not good.
But I don't know, like last like story about flights. I did the same thing on a flight because Eric, the guy who does him and Humble Productions there in Glasgow, him and Casper, and then Julian and a bunch of people from Berlin. We were going to shoot a short film in LA, and I think I was the only one who flew solo, because I flew out a week after they flew out.
It's a long flight as well.
Yeah, I flew to London, and then from London straight to LA. It was like 12, 13 hours.
Ooh.
This is the most fucked thing about it. We left from London, I think at like 9 a.m. or 8 a.m. And I was boozing, being like, all right, well, I've got like
12 hours to go.
Yeah. And I remember there was this woman next to me who lived in Italy, but she was originally from LA, moved to Italy, but she looked like she was out of like 1940s Hollywood. So me and her are just boozing. Me and her were like that, you know?
How old is she?
And she was old. She was like in her 60s. She was like just going back for a vacation, going to see family. But me and her were boozing. And then I remember falling asleep and waking up as we were flying over Las Vegas. Like literally flew 10 hours, but had the worst hangover of my life.
Oh.
And then when I got to LA and I finally got to where everybody was staying, like we had rented this house for an Airbnb. It was like 10 a.m. because of the time change.
Oh no! So it's 10
No,
a.m.
it was. We left at 8 and I got there and it was like 1 in the afternoon because the time change is 8 hours. So in essence, like it was like a 3-hour flight, and I got there. It was like I had lived a full lifetime and then was like reborn, hungover.
Oh, how long were you in LA for?
We were there. I think I was there for. They were there for a month. I was there for like 2.5 weeks. Eric had done this script, and it was called Sunshine Periphery. It's done now. We're just waiting to premiere it. I got there, and they had just done so much for me in terms of doing like the Topaz music video, Twilight Zone, Romeo and Juliet, all the promo material, and like being with me since day one. This was like their first big production, and they had gotten quite a bit of funding for it. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go there and be a hand, you know? If anybody needs anything, I remember doing lighting one day, grabbing coffees the other day, moving like equipment in and out of the truck. I wasn't there. We were there. I was there for 2.5 weeks. There was maybe like 3 or 4 days where we actually had free. It was not it wasn't like we were going to LA for a piss up. It was like you were there to kind of do a thing. We got up at like 7 a.m., would load everything into the trucks. We would go out and shoot all day, and then we would get back, eat dinner, and it would be like midnight. And you knew you had to be up at 6:30 the next day, you know? But that being said, like incredible time. Saw so much of California.
I always find the atmosphere on sets is quite different to the atmosphere in recording studios, though. There's a lot more tension on a set. Yeah,
of course. But I kind of like it, you know? And I think now I take it into recording studios where it's like everybody's eyes are on you as an actor. I'm not an actor, but from my outside perspective, you know, when they would call action, it seemed like the whole world stood still for like the 2 or 3 minutes that the scene was taking place. And I try to take that into a recording studio because I don't want to be there 20 to 30 takes of the same thing. One, I think it would tire you out and you would just become repetitive. Going into the studio with Jamie Holmes, which is he used to be part of the Lapels. I don't know if you've heard of the Lapels.
Yeah, I love the Lapels. I know Jamie. I've met him quite a few times.
Yeah, okay, yeah. So Jamie, Kieran from Fovs, Ryan from Fovs, they're all in the studio with me when we're doing our thing. And Jamie does a lot of helps me with the production, helps me with sound engineering. Same with Kieran, same with Ryan. And there is that kind of environment, you know, where for me anyway, I try to do everything in 7 to 10 takes. Like it doesn't always happen like that, but I think that there's like an essence of like a raw emotion in those 7 to 10 takes that you might lose. Okay, if you're doing harmonies, whatever, I mean, everything has to be perfect, but if you're doing like a main vocal, that those first 7 to 10 takes, like that is where you need to make your name, you know?
Is that kind of different though because you have such an intimate relationship with each of them and you know them so well? Like on a set, there's a lot of people there that are kind of just people you've never met before.
Where in the film?
Yeah, if we're kind of going on what you were saying there about how you were trying to do that in the same way like an actor, you don't want to take too many takes. But if you're an actor and everyone's kind of looking at you, there's a lot of people that you've never met before. Whereas in your environment, everyone that's in that room, you have a very kind of close creative relationship with.
Yeah. So you're definitely right. I mean, but that being said, I think that everybody on set, we were already quite close, but I agree with you. I think it's different knowing somebody's listening to you and you're alone in a booth rather than somebody's eyes on you.
Are they even in your mind when you're in the booth, though? Do you even think about them being there? I
try not to. When I'm alone in the booth, and to be honest with you, a lot of the vocal takes that I do solo. Like I have a studio here at home, like a full studio at home, and I do most of the vocal takes just by myself. When we go into the studio, I trust Jamie to be like, nah, mate, like that sounds like shit. We got to redo it, And at that point, then I'll do it. But I think it's different on the album that I'm working on right now. But I think with La La Land, a lot of it was like very, very close. I kind of wanted to do it that way, as if like you were in the room with me, and I kind of, how do I put this? I obsessed over it, I think that in different types of music, you would obsess over different things, Travis Scott would obsess over the beat. And for an album like Lala, I obsessed over how intimate it would make somebody feel, Did they feel like they were in the room with me? And also, to be honest with you, I met Jamie pretty far along in the process. I didn't really have a studio to go to, and far along in the process, like I had already done the demos, and then he pieced everything together. That man's a genius when it comes to sonics.
It's interesting what you're saying, though, about, that kind of intimate atmosphere that you wanted to create where it felt like the listener was in the room with you. How did that kind of apply to what you're doing with the vocal effects on it? Because you obviously kind of have these different characters that you're creating by the way that you treat your voice. Was that a tough balance? Because you are kind of pushing it quite far in some directions. How did you ensure that it still felt intimate at its heart?
That's a great question. That is a great question. I know more technical things now than I did then. To be honest with you, when me, Kieran, and Jamie would sit behind the desk, it was more so how it made you feel rather than about the technicals, So, for example, as we were mixing different songs, we would listen to it one time over, we would take notes, and then I would tell the story. All of those things actually happened, and I would tell the story of what happened and how it happened. And we would draw off the experience and what it would sound like rather than, it needs this effect, this effect. That's essentially me, Kieran, and Jamie afterwards. Like, those are minor touches, but it all comes from the performance, you know what I mean? The performance of the vocal, or the performance of how you play the piano, or how hard you play a key or a guitar. Everything else is kind of gloss. And I think in terms of how I would perform the vocals, it's all feel, It's not something that you can replicate. And that's why I think that we used a lot of the demo takes in the final product, because I'm the type of person that if I feel something, or if I write a song or whatever like that, I kind of try to record it right on the spot to feel and to give that pure emotion of what I'm feeling at that very moment of that experience at the exact same time. Because you could say, okay, well, I'm going to write this down and I'll record it on Tuesday. And I mean, that's what lockdown's been great for as well, because all I've really had is time, okay, so you think about this, okay, well, I have the time to do it right now, I'm just going to do it. And it was the same thing with La La Land, but then you refine and everything like that. But everything comes from a source of feeling something, and then you put reverb or you pan it to make it feel like you're in the room with the person and make it intimate.
I'm trying to think, was it Moulin Rouge as well that you recorded a lot of the vocal takes between like 12 and 6 a.m.
Yeah. How do you know that? Did I say that somewhere?
Yeah, I think so. You must have.
You're like, have you ever watched a Nardwuar interview?
I have, yeah.
that's some Nardwuar stuff right there.
When you're doing, I'm interested how that comes about though, because it's kind of tying into what you're saying there about intimacy, but is that something that's a conscious thought in terms of, I'm trying to work out how to craft intimacy and achieve that? Or is that something you come upon through experimentation in a session just rolling into the night?
I think with Moulin Rouge as well, I was working in a bar at the time. It was in Glasgow actually. It was in Finiston. It was called the Finiston. I lived right across the street on Argyle Street. So I would get off work at like 1, if we had a couple of drinks, like 2 a.m. And the thing about working in bars, I feel like once you get home, you're never completely turned off. You know, you've been thrust into like a super social atmosphere. So it's hard to just get home and fall asleep. Sometimes I would go to the gym at like 2, 3 a.m., come back and record, and it'd be like 3:30, 4. And that's where a lot of the intimacy comes from, because it seems like at that time, you're the only person that's awake, you know? There are literally no distractions, even with time difference. Like my friends back home are probably asleep, whatever. But then you come home and you seem like you're the only person awake, and it's so quiet. And that's kind of where that Moulin Rouge aesthetic came from, because I thought to myself, and then there were times where I didn't even record any vocals or any instruments. But if you listen to the song, sometimes I would just smoke cigarettes out the window and I would put the mic out and I would just capture Glasgow at 6 a.m. because it was my first time living in Europe. Everything was still so surreal to me. Moments like that, you know, I still look back on them being like, that was like, I was so fucking happy just to be there, you know, just to be hanging out that window, smoking a cigarette, being like, yeah, I'm recording Glasgow. I never thought I'd be here.
Is that where the sample on Twilight Zone comes from? I think you've got like a car going past.
Yeah, cars going past. I sampled trains on like the ScotRail trains on Sweet Life Interlude. Most of the samples is just like me with a microphone somewhere. Or I had a lot of voice memos on my phone that were dated back to 2009.
You still in Canada at that point?
Yeah. I didn't come to Glasgow until 2018.
Was that the first time you'd left Canada?
I mean, for vacation, no, but to live somewhere else, yeah. I essentially had all these like voicemails or voice memos from 2009. And La La Land was just born from kind of homesickness. And then I kind of transported my mind back to that moment where like I was graduating high school. And I was like, it'd be cool to tell that story, you know?
It's funny that in Canada you lived in Nova Scotia, right?
Yeah.
Which is New Scotland.
Yeah.
Do you see any parallels when you come over here? Can you understand why it's called New Scotland?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we have bagpipes in Nova Scotia.
Wow.
They're prevalent. The music is like really prevalent. Pub culture, really prevalent.
Was it Scots that settled there? Like originally?
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was Scots that settled there. And like even the names, you know, the amount of McDonald's I know, you know, or like the McDougalls, you know, that I grew up with. That's where they settled, because the Scottish settled in Nova Scotia. In Canada, you know, the British would have settled in like mainland Canada, and then Quebec was all French.
It's Montreal and Quebec.
And that's why, Montreal is in Quebec. Yeah. So that's why it's bilingual, because essentially in Canada, the British and the French had a massive battle on the Plains de Champlain. And that's outside of Quebec City. And Quebec City looks like a medieval town, and it has a massive, massive castle walls around the city. And that's why it was like the French's last stand, and they won. And that's why there's one part of Canada that's French.
That's crazy.
Fun fact. Yeah.
You used to summer there, right?
Yeah. That's another fact. So Yeah, my like half of my family, I would say 3/4 of my family lives in Montreal in a place called Laval. Disclaimer, if you ever go to Montreal and you're in Laval, Laval is all Greeks and Jews, like proudly.
Where did they sell from? We've got French, we've got English, we've got Scottish.
Yeah, so essentially, after I think the Second World War, there was a massive influx of like Italians, Greeks, Jews from Europe. They came through Halifax, actually, Pier 21, and they came on like Titanic type ships or whatever like that. And then they would settle in Montreal. And also, my grandmother actually, she came over on one of those ships, and then I think she stayed her first 2 years in Montreal because that was like the main Greek hub. Somebody had paid for her ticket, and she was a housewife, or not a housewife, but a housemaid for 2 years to pay off her ticket, and then moved to Halifax because she wanted to go by the water.
That's crazy. 2 years to pay off the ticket.
2 years to pay off the ticket. It's funny, like I spoke to her and my grandfather about these experiences, and I think it's just like anything else, you know, like when we go to uni or whatever like that, it's a different experience. And I was like, "Are you mad about that?" She's like, "No, you know, I agreed to do that, to pay off my ticket, but also like those were some of the best years of my life." She was kind of taking care of this like affluent lady in Montreal, and neither of them spoke each other's language. Like my grandmother didn't speak French, and this French woman didn't speak Greek. But she said it was crazy how somehow they understood each other.
Interesting, yeah. Well, I guess there was a time that we communicated before language, so it's probably tapping into something from there.
Yeah, of course, you know.
I always wonder how people thought before language. Like, because when you have thoughts in your head, they're in the language that you're speaking at that time.
Yeah.
What do people think before they had language?
That's deep, man.
It must have just been like impulsive, like the same way.
Yeah, it was
like a rabbit
instinct
thinks or whatever. Yeah, like a rabbit doesn't have a language in its head. It's just sees something and it wants to eat it.
Yeah, I mean, animals go off of instinct. So I think that we would probably, I mean, we're animals, so like we would probably have gone off of instinct and then developed language. And I think music is a part of that. Yeah, I think music is a part of that as well, you know?
It's storytelling.
Of course. You know, and that's the way that I approach it.
Is that what you look for when you're listening to it? Or you listen to someone else's music as the story of what you're latching onto?
I mean, not even. I listen to everything. I listen to everything except for country, to be honest with you, like bad country, like I don't know.
What about new country, like Old Town Road?
Yeah, like Tim McGraw type country, you know? Some of it doesn't even have lyrics in it, you know? But I think that it's just my approach to it. I think that I need to have a story. I need to draw off of experience to kind of create that kind of scene. Because I think of music, and when I create music, I think of it as like the music is as like a canvas, you know, a canvas with paint on it, and then like the lyrics put the final touches on it. So, for example, you know, if you look at the Mona Lisa, if her eyes weren't pointing a certain direction, it wouldn't look like she was looking at you from all angles, right? But it's that one final detail, like the lyrics, that kind of make it click in your head.
She doesn't have any eyebrows, though.
Does she not?
No.
I mean, that's very 2021, though.
I think we've got too much eyebrows in 2021.
Yeah.
People like to try and accentuate them now, don't they?
Yeah, but she's got, like, she had her eyebrows bleached, didn't she?
I just don't think they're painted on. Like, he didn't finish it. It's not done, I'm pretty sure.
Well, he's lazy as fuck. Like, how did he forget the eyebrows? Fucking alky.
Oh, it's interesting. So when you're crafting those soundscapes before you put the lyrics on, are you still tapping into the same memory that they are, or are they completely different parts of you that you're kind of trying to express?
I think at first, because it's kind of subconsciously, like you could wake up one day and be like, I want to make whatever, you know, I'll wake up and make something that isn't what I'm working on, but it's just something, you know, and then you make 100 somethings, 100 beats, 100 like chords, 100 whatever, And it just over time you start fitting. It's like puzzles, you know. You're like, well, and I do this a lot. I go back through like my archives and I start listening to things, being like, man. And one of the songs on the next album was one of these where I listened back to it and I was like, man, it was pretty much done. It just didn't fit into the story of La La Land or like the feeling that I was feeling at that time. But it just fit into everything that I was doing now. It's weird, you know. You create something like that, and you don't even know when you're going to use it.
And the thing with the story of La La Land as well, though, is that it's so tight. Like I was looking at it because you obviously have the kind of film titles throughout, and you've kind of got this film imagery going on. But if you look at the way it's actually structured, it's almost like a 3-act structure.
It's a what?
It's almost like a 3-act structure. Like you've got, in film you have the 3-act structure that's kind of the way the story unfolds.
Yeah.
Because you've got 2 songs, interlude, 3 songs, which the main part of the film is usually 50% longer, I think, than the other 2 sections. Then you've got an interlude and then a third. Like the way you've kind of laid it out with the emotional beats, it kind of takes on a similar pattern.
I mean, to be honest with you, yes, it was supposed to be a story with a start and a finish. I think that a lot of my albums will be like that. I hadn't even thought about the fact that it was like...
It's funny though, isn't it? These natural kind of ways that we tell stories.
Yeah, because I think it's second nature. I think it's subconscious, you know? And I think that, I mean, I'll put in a little tidbit. Like the album that I'm working on, I'm probably 7 of 10 songs done, but it's all about dreams, you know. And I'll tell you why. One, because like really, for the longest time I had nothing to draw inspiration from, you know, like on a day-to-day basis. Like our lives are not changing, but then I thought about it. I've had some like profound dreams over the last year. And before all this happened, I ended up calling my aunt. She's like, Greeks are super into reading dreams, and calling my mom and talking to them about it. And they're like, these mean something. And then that's when like the light bulb moment went off, you know? I think even in storytelling or dreaming or any situation that you're in, subconsciously your body's trying to tell you something. So for example, like let's say people are going through anxiety. Anxiety is your body's like fight or flight system being like, you're in a situation that you're not supposed to be into. Like the only time that I feel anxiety is when I overbook myself or when I'm doing something that I should not be doing. Again, it's different for everybody, but that's like just an example of something, some way that I react. So then I just kind of ran with that idea. And then I thought about every emotion that I was kind of feeling over this time, or even in the past, and kind of told it through dreams that I had had.
Are you able to analyze dreams now? Like, can you unpack them, or would you have the kind of tools to unpack them when they happen now?
Absolutely not. I just call my mom. Like me and my mom have like regular coffee dates where I'm like, oh man, I had the craziest dream. Like I was in Tesco and I bought like tomatoes and they were rotten. She was like, oh my God, like you need, she's like, you need to do your laundry right now. And I'm like, why? And she's like, you just do. I'm like, all right.
Man, I had a dream last night where I was on a train. You know, like one of those like Japanese bullet trains, that the really kind of fast ones that are nuts.
Yeah.
And I was just walking through it and having conversations with like all these people that I used to know when I was at school and everything, and from the past. But I don't know what it means.
Oh man.
I don't usually have dreams like that, but that was one that, it was weird as well because I'd woken up and then I fell back asleep for another half hour, and it was during that half hour that I had that dream, which is why I remember it.
Is that not crazy when that happens? You know, you fall asleep the whole night and it's just like blank, and you wake up and you're like, oh, okay, I'm going to get a glass of water. Then you go back to bed and you have the craziest dream ever.
I think it's because you wake up in the middle of it. Like because you wake up in the middle, you remember it.
I'm trying to think. I don't think it's completely the same, but I'm not going to try to give too much away. But there's a part in the album where I essentially got my aunt to record herself kind of explaining dreams, and I kind of used that as like samples. And she said that see somebody from the past and you will see someone that you haven't seen in a long time or something like that. So you might have a chance interaction with a friend that you've like haven't seen in years.
Probably will.
It's like
I'm
your
back
brain.
in my hometown at the minute, so like the odds
That's
are
probably it.
that I
Yeah.
might. Yeah, need to unpack that further. Another time. Do you ever have sleep paralysis? You know, when you kind of have that thing where you're awake but you can't get up.
Yeah, I had it one time. And like that was enough. I had sleep paralysis probably before I was coming to the UK, and I remember it exactly. I was like pretty much binge watching to catch up on Game of Thrones, and I remember having sleep paralysis, and like the undead king was there like looking over me, and I was like, and I just remember being in the dream being like, let me loose, you fucking mutt. And he was just looking at me, and it felt like hours where he was just like looking at me, and I was just like paralyzed to the bed.
It's literally a couple minutes as well whenever it happens, but it feels like hours. Yeah,
I don't know, it's weird how we know so little about the brain.
Yeah, because they always used to say, didn't they, this is a myth, but they always used to say you only use 10% of your brain. But I feel like it's almost like we only know 10% about the brain, rather, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I think we don't.
Or probably not even that, to be fair, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how to describe it, because they say, okay, well, the geniuses that we've had, you know, like the Einsteins, Da Vinci's, people of that nature, they've all been a bit crazy. Or have they acted in a way that people just didn't understand because they didn't have they weren't using the mental capacity to understand. And I'm not even gonna take like the popular route and like loop Kanye West into this, but
we were both thinking.
yeah, I saw the look in your eye. We were both like, Kanye?
Yeah, I think part of what's going on with him though is fame as well. Like that level of fame must fucking drive you insane.
Yeah, I mean, like look at Michael Jackson. I don't know why, but I fell into like a YouTube hole
video where he's dangling
Michael
the
Jackson.
baby out the window. Or have you seen the video where he's in the supermarket? He built a supermarket.
Yeah.
Fuck,
he like rented out a supermarket just to go grocery shopping. Imagine if you had to do that just to feel normal.
You think you'd be able to wear like prosthetics though? You think you'd be able to kind of disguise yourself enough that I guess the voice would fuck you though.
Yeah, but I mean, imagine having to go to that length to feel normal, you know? Like you thinking, okay, me or you right now, okay, we're going outside. I'm making a shopping list being like, I hope this doesn't take too long. Imagine being in a position where you're like, I need to put on prosthetics or put on a disguise to go get groceries. Like, oh shit, I'm out of eggs. Like, time to get the disguise on. What? You know, that's kind of why I envy these celebrities like Frank Ocean who continue a little bit of anonymity or you know, some type of normal life, because it can, like, obviously it can fuck with you. You know, people saying, oh, well, Britney Spears, for example, or whatever, these people are having mental breakdowns. Of course they're having mental breakdowns. Can you imagine if every day you went on the news and there was just like some bullshit about you? Everybody knew every facet of your life? That's... I don't know.
It's not even your life, though. It's this kind of version that they've invented for themselves.
Exactly. They don't even know the truth. They take one piece of information and then they create a whole narrative around it. And I think that people in that situation could lose the narrative. They could lose their own narrative.
Yeah. You talk about that on the record, I think. Moulin Rouge. Thinking he's real, but he's pretend. That's kind of touching on that.
Yeah, I mean... And it has to do with ego, you know? It's all down to ego because, I mean, we all have one. It's whether you can kind of keep it in check or not, you know?
Do you have to develop tools to do that?
I don't know. I'm Canadian, so I feel like it's kind of built in. We just apologize for everything, you know? But also, I'm just like a very personable person. I try to be polite to everybody that kind of comes my way. You could say it's like my way of doing business. I don't even see it like that. I just see it as you're making human connections, you know? I want people to see me and have a pleasant experience because that's what I want them to remember, you know? Nothing really phases me, you know, except for this one time I had a show at, I'm looking at the poster right now. I can't even fucking remember where it was. But I didn't like how that show went. That fazed me. But other than that, you know, people could say whatever, and I really wouldn't take any mind to it. I just pride myself on trying to be polite to everybody and putting energy into the world that I kind of want to see reciprocated. Is it always reciprocated? No. But that being said, I can then look at the end of the day at myself in the mirror and be like, all right, like at least I'm not a piece of shit. But then it can also get you in trouble. Can also get you in trouble just by being polite. And you're like, what?
Yeah, I think I found that when I moved to Edinburgh for the first time. Because I lived in like a small village in Aberdeenshire my whole life, where everyone was very open and nice to each other. You say hello to everyone on the street. It's a very kind of community thing. And then when you go to Edinburgh and you went to Freshers Week or whatever, you find that most people aren't that way. And I almost feel like you can. It's very easy to be too open and then get hurt.
Yeah, that, and then also I think that people are so conditioned to sometimes take it the wrong way, you know, like you're polite and then they think that it's something that it's not, you know, like I think that that's something that's kind of deep rooted in everything going on in society right now. We just all need to be polite to each other. We need to take care of each other, especially in these kinds of times, but then know that it's not for any certain reason. It doesn't have to be. Of course, sometimes it'll be like that, but there needs to be, you can do something that's helpful to somebody or positive to somebody and then not expect anything in return, you know?
How are you doing for wine?
Yeah, I might grab some more wine.
By the way, so
okay.
I might go to the bathroom and maybe grab a beer.
Yeah, cool.
I was thinking when we took a little break there about what we were saying, you know, we're talking about being open and trying to be a good person and be yourself and be honest. Do you think, is authenticity the key to good songwriting?
Yeah, of course. You know, because if I came out and I made music and I was talking about like 50 Cent being shot 10 times, like it's not true, you know? And I think that's where a lot of this like cookie cutter music comes from, is it's surface level, you know? And I mean, don't get me wrong, people can make music about anything. I'm not saying that any music is bad music, okay? Yeah, okay, that's not true. But there is bad music out there. But I've been thinking
what
about
I'm
that
lately, because people always say that music is subjective, but I think music is subjective half the time, and half the time I think it is objective, and there is music that is bad.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not trying to put anybody down. Anybody, if you're trying to make music, whatever the quality, keep doing it. Do you? But for me, I think in order for me to make music, in order for myself to make sure that I'm happy with it, I've got to be drawing from things that I feel are authentic, because I've caught myself sometimes, you know, making something and being, that's not me, you know? If it's not me, then that it's not doing me any justice, you know? Like, okay, if you talk about it from like a brand perspective, what kind of brand are you trying to build? It's essentially, as an artist, you're building off of like you and your own experiences and how you perceive this world. So if you're not honest about that, then what are you doing?
Yeah. Where do you think that if you're coming up with something, like it's interesting you said that you'll come up with something and you'll think that's not me. Where is that coming from then? Why is that happening?
I think that's happening because there are pressures from every possible angle to make something that's going to make playlists or do this or do that or be catchy or whatever. But then what I found out early, my song that has performed well and keeps performing well is Topaz, and that's simply about my cousin showing up with the first car that any one of us got. It could be a simple concept like that, but as long as you like, it's honest storytelling and you capture the moment that it was in, I think that I'm doing myself justice. And where I have gotten off of that is where, you know, I'll make a beat being like, oh, this is hard. I start telling a story that isn't from my perspective, you know? I don't know how to explain it. I really don't know how to explain it, but it's as if like I'm trying to tell it from like the perspective of like Brent Fayez or somebody else. And that's just not, it's not going to do it, because I can even tell in like the tone of my voice or my delivery that I don't believe it myself, and if I don't believe it, then when I'm putting down a vocal track or anything, it's just not going to, it doesn't have that thing,
It could be useful though, because then again, does that give you more conviction in the ideas that you do believe in?
Of course. Yeah, of course. It solidifies the fact that I just need to keep going on my own path. And I was actually speaking to this about this to my friend Max, aka like Fo, and he sent me his like latest project, and I told him, I was like, listen, I can tell that you're making strides in like your songwriting and everything, but I can also say truthfully that it's you, it's you that's making this music. It's not, you're not channeling anybody. If I wanted to channel Frank Ocean, or I wanted to channel Brent Faiyaz, or the list goes on and on, it wouldn't be me. It would just be an offset or like an off-brand of that,
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because that's often, I'll have people on the podcast who really, they'll come on and make the statement that they hate chart music or they hate pop music. And my kind of thing with it is, if I can hear the artist themselves, if I can hear that singular voice in that person, I don't care what kind of genre it is, even if it's done up in that kind of gloss way, as long as you can hear that voice, it's fine. It's good. If you can't, that's when you've got a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I don't even like the mindset that chart music is bad. There have been so many artists, Dark Side of the Moon was number 1 on the charts for a record amount of years. Are you going to say that that's not straight from their like hearts and souls? No, that's just music that was marketed the right way, that had backing behind them, and it did well. I don't think that success dictates how honest music is. That's all down to the person.
It is funny. I mean, I think the other thing is that it has to kind of be breaching a new frontier in some respects. That's what usually shoots it up to the top. Because you can have stuff that's really great, but it's kind of emulating the past, and it can still be really true to them and nice, but it's probably not going to reach those heights purely because people have heard stuff that's a little bit on the same path before.
Yeah, that's why I would just tell anybody who's making music, just make the music that you want to make. Like, my golden rule is to make what I think is dope, and to keep doing that, to push my narrative rather than somebody else's. Because I think my narrative means something. I think my narrative of whatever it is, it means something. It means something to me, so that's what I'm going to keep doing. It's not like black and white, it's all gray. Don't think that you need to fit into a mold. Be who you want to be. Color your hair however color you want it. Date whoever you want. Call yourself whatever gender you feel as if you are. If you're not a gender, whatever. Do whatever the fuck you want to do. As long as you're being authentic to you, and then that's your narrative. As long as you stick to your own narrative, then fuck what anybody thinks, and you will be successful. But that being said, if you want to do that, then you need to put the time in. What people do see is when a song comes out, when an Instagram post is done, when a video is released, etc., etc., etc. What they don't see is, somebody waking up at 6 o'clock in the morning, doing playlisting, doing this and that, emailing people to just be in contact in terms of like magazines. All of that is part of it. This is a business. It's the music business. Is it a hard route to take? Yeah, of course, but push your own narrative and have that belief in yourself that you're going to invest and propel your own self. Like, yeah, I don't know if that answers the question, but
it's interesting. But at what point did you gain a sense of your narrative? Because I imagine in order to get to that point, you need to maybe take a little bit of time to work out exactly what your narrative is and what you want to say and how you want to convey that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that it happened until I got to Glasgow. I think that when I got to Glasgow, because the way that I got to the UK was there was this London label rep who went to a music showcase in Canada. She essentially was like, you should come to the UK. And I was like, yeah, okay. And I, luckily enough, had invested in Canadian weed stocks, which everybody told me was fucking insane. And I put a lot of money, a lot of my hard-earned money in Canadian weed stocks, and they essentially paved the way for me to go to the UK and be comfortable and do that. So, and I still hold them to this day. Still fucking Canadian weed all the way.
Wait, so you sold some to get to the UK, but you still have a stake in it?
Oh, hell yeah.
What happened? Why did they show up?
Because it became legalized, and now the US is going to legalize it. There's a long track record. I've been investing in them since like 2013. Essentially, marijuana is legalized in Canada. It's being legalized across the US, and a lot of it is being used for medical use in Europe. And it's all going under the radar, but this all makes money. And when all these companies came about, I was like, this is a fucking no-brainer. And everybody's like, you're going to lose your fucking shirt. And I was like, well, if I do, I don't fucking care, because if I lose it, I lose it. You know, like if you could spend $5,000, you could spend $5,000 on a vacation, get pissed in Vegas and gamble it. Instead, I put it into weed stocks and it paid off. Anyway, so I was comfortable enough that at that time, she was like, you should come to the UK. And I was like, yeah. So I got to London, and then I remember going to Glasgow in 2017 to go see Radiohead at the first ever Transmit. And I just loved the vibe of Glasgow and of Scottish people. So I was in London, in Tottenham, loved it. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to Glasgow. So go to Glasgow. That's like the rest is history. But all it took was one person to kind of give me that confidence, or like meeting Eric and Casper and Julian, where I didn't know anybody, and I was in Finiston in this apartment mixing Topaz of any song, and then I get a knock at the door. It's like, and I'm like, oh fuck, because I was like blasting it pretty loud, and he comes at the door and he's just like, hey man, I hear you playing some music. I'm like, yeah, I'm sorry about that. And he's like, no, I've got 4 beers here. I want to hear it. And I'm like, who the fuck are you?
That's like someone out of a movie.
Yeah. And he came in and he listened to it and he was like, okay, yeah, give me 5 minutes. And I was like, what is going on here? And he calls Eric and Casper and he's like, yeah, my friends, they're coming up to the hill. We have more beers. We're going to shoot a music video. And that was all it took, you know? It took one person to have confidence in me and in my narrative, which was at the time homesickness. I was like, okay, well, I've got to tell the story of like where I came from. And I've got to tell the story now of like where I'm going and how that happens. And, you know, I've seen some crazy things in my life, but how everything is relevant and how everything is relatable. Everybody has a high school sweetheart. Everybody breaks up with that high school sweetheart. Unless, you know, you're still married to them, which you are like 1 in a million, and congrats to you. But everybody's going to go through these things, you know? So everybody's going to make mistakes. Everybody's going to break up with somebody. Everybody's going to be the asshole in the situation. And people can relate to that. It's just real, you know? And I don't know. That's my narrative, I guess. I don't know. But just to bring it in a personal level, I don't know. What the fuck is my narrative? Like, what do you think my narrative is?
It's interesting you say that, though, because I'm intrigued by when you realize how universal it is in that way. That's a degree of that must shift your perception to a certain extent. Does it make you feel more connected to people?
Yeah, of course. But I think that I've always been connected to people. I think that one of my greatest joys in life, which has been taken away right now, is to go into a room that I know no one and just to talk to people. Like, where do you come from? I just love meeting people, and I think that the more people that you meet and the more people that you listen to, it gives you a greater perspective about how diverse this fucking planet is, you know? I didn't know about Grenfell before I came to the UK. I'm thinking like, how the fuck is that possible? What? Because typical news agencies don't give a fuck? So before I got to the UK and before I made the friends that I made, like, shout out Pappy Moses, shout out, David, and just to sit there and to, as this sheltered Canadian, and hear the stories of everybody that I came into contact with, you think like, whoa, there is a different perspective that is here that I didn't know about. And I think that the number one thing that we can take with us is like just to listen to somebody else's story, to ask questions, to not lose that curiosity. Because I always go into a room and I'm curious. I love people watching, and I love creating the narrative on somebody, but then I also love figuring out what the narrative is, In a way, like, Scottish people have like helped me with that as well, because the first time that I came to Glasgow, I was in a pub for maybe 1 or 2 minutes, and I'd come to Europe to see Radiohead alone, and within 1 or 2 minutes of going to I forget which bar it is, but within 1 or 2 minutes of going in there, like 3 Scottish people, these guys had come up to me and they're like, "What do you mean? Like, you're having a pint alone? Like, what's your story?" And honestly, they were going to transmit as well, and like, that was like my crew for the whole week.
Would that not happen in Canada too, though? I get the impression that it
does happen
in a similar way. Yeah,
of course. It happens in certain parts of Canada, just like it happens in certain parts of the UK. I think Halifax is so like that, but then and Montreal is so like that. But if you go to somewhere like Toronto, people will look at you for opening the door for them. Like, they're just not used to it.
Toronto's the only place I've ever been in Canada,
and they're nice people as well. But it's like going to London, like, people aren't as open as they are in Glasgow. So what, like, how it's a testament to how great the people from Glasgow are, that they, without knowing you, would kind of bring you in with open arms,
Is London almost too big?
No, not at all.
What's feeling that in London then? Why isn't it as open? What's culturally kind of feeling that shift?
Because I know amazing people in London, amazingly open people in London. It's the culture of, you're there to better yourself at any cost, like this, like, corporate culture, because like corporate business is like massive in London. It's massive in Toronto as well. But this, like, corporate, and New York, and corporate culture, I think, has something to do with it. Whereas like somewhere like Glasgow, very blue collar. In a way, Berlin, very blue collar as well, but like a bit more artsy and does have that like wanky essence to it as well. But again, a harbor city like Halifax as well, super blue collar. And I love those blue collar places, because people just look at you, and it's like every man standing, or every man, woman, whatever, standing next to each other is like, we're all in this together type mentality. And that's something that I took, like, I live by the saying, like, a win for you is a win for me.
I like that.
Yeah, and it happens like, okay, you want to talk about business, I'm a businessman as well, like, say you become the next fucking Joe Rogan, like, is that not going to benefit me in the fact that more eyes are going to be on my podcast with you? Or if I become the next mega global superstar, is that not going to put more eyes on your podcast? We all have something to gain from each other, So that's why I think that it's so important to, every interaction that we have with somebody is like, like, we're friends now, Alex, come on. We're having a drink together right now, This is just one for the lads.
Yeah. I get what you said, yeah. In the cities like Glasgow and Berlin, the places where this is prominent, where people are very open in that way, is that going to become more that way or less so? Because I feel like it could become more that way, particularly after COVID. Like, if you'd asked me like last year, would I have said in 10 years' time, will it still be the same? I think it would be a little bit less, because of the way kind of social media and technology is advancing us. But after COVID, is this going to shift things so that we kind of move more in that direction of open interactions and approaching people and being friendly in that way?
I hope so, man. I hope, because honestly, from all the lockdowns and everything like that, all I want to do is just go to a pub and like, I don't even care who's there. Like, I just want to make friends, you know? And I hope that people take that kind of mindset into it. But I mean, who knows, you know? It's hard. It's a hard one.
It could also be, though, if times get tough, sometimes people move apart a little bit. Because there's going to be a job hit after this, you know. It's going to be tough for a while, long while.
Of course, but I think that the only way to get each other through this is to help each other. I started doing this last week. I started messaging or calling like one random person a day, being like, yo, let's get a call in, or how are you doing? You doing okay?
I like that.
It could be like, okay, family that you haven't talked to in a while, but then also friends, family, whatever. Some just people on Instagram, you know. I'm like scrolling through stories, and then I just like see one person. I'm like, fuck it, that's my person of the day. Like, how you doing, man? Because you don't know when one interaction or one action that you do in a day is going to change somebody's day for the better. I just think if you do that, it's going to make the person feel good. 100%. 2, people remember that kind of shit, you know?
Particularly now, when there's such a lack of connection.
Yeah, like that time that you didn't think that we were going to have a drink over this podcast. And then you're like, oh, okay, let's take a break. I'm going to go get a beer. And I was like, yeah, come on.
That's because it's like 6 p.m. here, whereas for you, you're like an hour ahead. You're a little bit more into the evening.
An hour ahead, come on.
Hey, 7 p.m., 6 p.m., there's a bit of a difference there. 7 p.m., having a drink, you're doing okay. 6 p.m., still dinner time.
Yeah, true. Okay. That's a good point.
What is the drinking culture in Berlin? Is it quite different to Glasgow?
It's super cheap, man. Honestly, I don't know how. Like, I got a half-liter bottle of like pretty good wine for like €4.
You would be double that here.
It would be double, and in Canada, this bottle would be like $20. Like, alcohol is taxed as fuck in Canada.
How come?
It's just government taxation. It's all because alcohol is governed by Justin Trudeau, and it's really taxed. But that's fine. I mean,
how long's he been in now?
I think after he's probably going to win the next election, so it's already been 8 years. He's probably going to do like 12 years, I think.
Wow. Is there no limit there?
But honestly, good for him. There's no limit. Yeah, and I mean, like, honestly, the guy's young. The guy's like quick-witted. When I tell this to people, essentially when COVID happened, he passed a bill to give $2,000 to every Canadian who had lost work a month for like 8 months. And essentially that's why like Canada's economy is doing all right. And people would be like, oh, well, that's socialist or whatever like that. Well, you know what? Like, shut the fuck up, okay? A government is put in place to help people when it needs to help people. Like, this is like we have never, our generation has never experienced anything like this, you know? So relax.
I mean, not just our generation, any generation, really. Like, even if you look at the Spanish flu, it wasn't shut down in the same way. A lot of people died, but it wasn't we've got this horrible thing where we have a really horrible death toll and then a massive economic impact as well. We've got the worst of both worlds.
Yeah, of course. So I don't know how all of this ends. I just know that I hope that a lot of good music is made during all of this, and I hope that people put into perspective like how fortunate we are, you know, that some people, I mean, I think of myself as fortunate because I'm not out on the street, you know, like I get to eat a stew after this. I get to drink wine. I get to make music. It's not all that bad. Okay. I've got to stay inside. I get to chill with one friend each sitting. Okay. I get it. And am I hurting? Yeah, of course. But there are people out there that are doing a lot worse. I'm not trying to put down what anybody's feeling right now. What anybody's feeling is like completely valid. My way of coping anyway is to just, I don't know, like I kind of take this like Kobe Bryant mindset to life, where it's like you get up the next day, doesn't matter how you're feeling, like you put the work in. You know, you make a beat, you put vocals down, you do anything. And I think that I've trained my mind that way, or like I have that mindset anyway, which is a blessing and a curse, because it happened. Like last night, for example, I didn't get to bed until 3 or 4 in the morning. I got into bed with the intention of sleeping at 11, but I thought about the delivery of one vocal track that I put down yesterday for 5 hours, being like, is that it? How could it be different? What kind of angle could I hit it from? What kind of tone of voice? That obsessive nature, I think, is what makes me me. It's a blessing and a curse, you know? But we're all fortunate right now. If you have a roof over your head, if you have food, you're fortunate. If I'm up at 4 a.m. thinking of that rather than how am I going to pay rent, I am fortunate.
I think as well, what you're saying there about that obsessive nature, you would have that regardless, and at least music is a healthy kind of channel for it. Like if you didn't have any creative outlet, that could be quite a damaging thing to your life.
Oh my God, I would have gone crazy. I would have gone crazy by this point. We've been in lockdown since November. By the end of it, I'll probably have an album done, maybe feature, single, and 2 clothing capsules designed. And I'm telling you, if I had not done that, I would have had like a mental breakdown, you know, because I'm the type of person that I need to always be locked in or with something driving me forward. If I don't have that, it's just my personality that I will spontaneously combust. You know, like I would just sit there eating stew and being like, and my head would blow up.
I mean, it's interesting you bring up clothing there. How do you see that like relating into your narrative, like what we were speaking about earlier?
I think if you look at the clothing, it's essentially what I've been wearing since day one. Like I grew up skateboarding. Now, like streetwear is cool. I'm trying to take it in. I've got the summer capsule done with collaborations from 5 different artists from different places all over the planet Earth. And then,
how do you come into contact with these artists?
Honestly, it's just the same way that I do everything in my life. You know, I'm in a room and I'm like, hey, what's up? What's your story? You know, like it's the same way that everything in my life works. You know, I'm like your friend, and then like all of a sudden you're like, yeah, I'm actually an artist. And I'm like, what the fuck? Why didn't you tell me? Like we were too drunk that night. I'm like, oh, okay. But then also the only thing that I really do on Instagram, like I'll post something and then like I'll just search for art or whatever like that, or whatever I'm interested in, mostly NBA news, but like a lot of art as well. And then people just come up, and then I just have 0 wall, and I'm like, hey, what's your story? And they're like, what the fuck? Like, who is this random person messaging on me on Instagram? But then some of them are like, hey, like, and this is the way that I react. I'm like, oh my God, thank you so much for being interested in my existence. Like any questions that you have, like, please let me know. I'll answer them. Essentially, that's how it came about. And I was like, you know, it'd be cool. Like if you had something that you really liked and then I put it on some clothing, they're like, I love that. And I'm like, all right, sick. Let's do it. Why? We don't have to do it. But like, let's just fucking do it. You know, let's make skate clothing with like really good quality art from really good quality artists.
Are you familiar with their story before you approach them in any way? No, are you familiar with their art in any way before you approach them?
Yeah, of course, because a lot of the artists that I'm working with on this capsule, I was already interested in their stuff like a year ago, or like one of the people is involved in like my music videos, but he's also like an impeccable like landscape photographer. Or the other person is like Ting, who does my album artwork. Or I don't know, because you were in school in Edinburgh. Do you know Alice?
Alice who?
On Instagram, it's like Alice 35mm.
No, I don't think let me check.
Alice Hillwood.
Mm.
Her photography is insane.
Oh, yeah.
And I was a fan
of her on Instagram before.
Yeah. So I mean, like, I've been a fan of hers for a while, and like, I don't know, I have no filter. So like, when I see stories, I'm just like, oh my God, I'm so fucking proud of you. And they're like, huh? and like, you know, I'm just like, I am like a fan of people succeeding. Anyway, so she was like selling some prints. I bought a print. I fucking love it. It stands in my room. And I was like, hey, like, I'm thinking of doing this. Would you be interested? Yeah. And then everybody said yeah. And I was like, okay, well, that was fucking easy. You know, like, I think people want to be involved in cool shit going on. It's like being friends with all the, like, I'm very fortunate because I'm friends with fucking talented people. So I'm like, yo, I'm thinking of like making some clothing with like really good art on it. And they're like, all right, let's do it. And I'm like, that's fucking easy. All I've got to do now is go into Photoshop, make all of this shit compatible and look fucking great. And now like people can wear it. You know, people can buy a shirt or buy whatever and be like, oh, like Ting is awesome, or Alice is awesome, or Julian's awesome. And like, to me, I'm like, I'm happy with that. It's just about making things that I like and challenging myself to create things in a new media, you know? So with the collaborations, challenging myself to reach out and make clothing that is accessible for everyone in terms of price, but then also at a quality where with all the cotton we're using, it's organic. You know, we ventured into polyester made from recycled plastic in the last capsule. Finding things like that not everybody's doing. It's a bit more challenging in terms of cost to price analysis and all that kind of shit, but like, it's fucking worth it, you know? Like, fashion creates a lot of fucking waste, and I'm not down with that. I'm down with making things that make people feel comfortable and make them feel good when they're wearing it. But yeah, I mean, I think the next challenges for me after this capsule, I tried cut and sew with the denim jackets. I thought they were incredible, but I didn't know if they'd sell because of the price point. And every time I say that, those items are the first to fucking sell out. Like, it's fucked up.
What was the price point?
£170.
Whoa.
£170, but what you're getting is a denim jacket made by somebody who's getting a good wage. Like, it was made in an atelier here in Berlin. Patches that were put onto the jacket were hand created by this girl Sarah from Glasgow. They were made with great quality fabrics. And I'm thinking to myself, if it's me, I'm paying £170 for it. But by and large, who is? And they sold out.
I think as well, you're probably putting it's less of a markup in terms of price. We pay £60 for a pair of Nike shoes that cost £2.50 to make.
Yeah. Give or take.
Probably more.
Yeah. Probably more than £60 for a pair of Nike shoes, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's maybe a few years old, but still pretty crazy. Like the markup on that kind of thing, because everyone's I mean, you don't even want to think about the wages that the people who make those things are on. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't really even make that much money off of the denim jackets. Like, per jacket, they were almost £100 to make. I have to factor in shipping costs. I have to factor in etc., etc., etc. And I didn't really make money off of them, but fuck, did it feel good to have those motherfuckers sell out?
How many did you make?
Everything that I make is in everything is limited quantity. Everything is made in a multiple of 6. That being said, the name of the game is that I make 6 items only for that design, and then it's never used again.
How many do you keep? Just one?
Well, I make 7 and I keep one myself. But most of the time, I get fucking Greek and I sell it off. Because I'm like, well... And it's also because it's a weird, amazing feeling when somebody's like, oh my God, I'm so pissed that I missed out on that. And I'm like, you know what? Just fucking have mine. I've maybe, from the 3 capsules, I maybe have 4 pieces. because somebody messages me on Instagram or something, and I'm like, you know what, man, I have this size. Does that fit you? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, just fucking take it. It's like a weird, amazing feeling when somebody fucks with what you're doing. You know, you would give them the shirt off your fucking back. You know, think about any time that somebody would message you and be like, man, I fucking loved that last podcast that you did. How good does that make you feel?
I had a message for that today. Very good.
Very good. So when there's a girl from Edinburgh, actually, I won't say her name just in case, was listening to Love Interlude from La La Land. And that's like one of or the most intimate song, I think, on the album for me.
Cinematic too, though.
So cinematic. And I was just like, hey, give me a couple weeks and I'm going to give you a Google link to like all the new music. Because if somebody cares that much for what I'm doing, I'm like, hey, be a part of the process. If you have like a critique of anything that I'm doing right now, I want to hear it. Like, I was watching a documentary actually on the making of My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy by Kanye West. And there were stories of like delivery guys bringing food and him being like him striking up a conversation, being like, I like you. Like, you want to listen to this? And obviously the person's going to be like, absolutely. But I don't think that critiques in terms of music or clothing or anything have to come from people who are professionally trained, you know?
Well, it's interesting you say that. I had a guy on the podcast yesterday, and he was saying that as soon as he was kind of talking about how there are creators and there are consumers in the world, and he doesn't think that a creator, particularly of music, can ever hear any piece of music in the same way again. And he thinks this is important to kind of give it to consumers before he puts it out and see what their kind of view on it is. Because it's a completely different perspective.
Of course, because they don't know anything that's going on in the mixing process. They don't know anything about mastering. They don't know anything about levels or whatever, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But what they do know is what they like. Even without knowing, they have an ear for it. So whenever I see something like that on Instagram or whatever fucking interweb media that there is, where somebody's like, I fuck with this, like, I'll fuck with them and be like, yo, check out this fucking link. It's new music. Let me know what you think. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, fucking listen to it and give me notes. And they're like, what do I know? And I'm like, you know everything. You're the consumer.
What are their notes like?
Honestly, a lot of them are just like, oh my God, I love this. But some of them have been amazing. You know, some of them have been like, oh, you know, like, I really think that, I think in Love Interlude, one of them was like, I really think you don't need as many layers on your voice. And I was already thinking that. And Jamie was already thinking that. And when I got into the studio with Jamie, he was like, no, we got to strip layers off this voice. Like, it's got to be like you, a piano, strings, and your voice. And you hear it from yourself, okay. But I've listened to this song 4 million times in the last 3 months, trying to like perfect this thing. So what the fuck do I know? Because like your ears, after a while, don't know what they're listening to because you've listened to it so many times. Jamie, who is, I think, a sound engineer, producer, human genius, says, hey, mate, I think we need to fucking strip this thing back. And then you have, most importantly, somebody who doesn't know being like, I think it would be more emotive if it was like this. And you're already thinking about it. But sometimes you're too close to something to want to do that, you know?
I worry about that a lot. It's hard. Like we have such a lack of perspective on our own project as creators.
Yeah, that's why I scour Instagram, and then if anybody like shares or whatever or fucks with the music, I'm like, hey, like out of the blue, I'll be like, hey, here's an updated link to like what I'm working on right now. And they're like, what? And I'm like, yeah, take a listen to it. Let me know what you think. I love doing that. That's my main action on Instagram, is like surprising people with shit. I love it. That's what it's there for. It's not there for me to like wake up every morning and like scroll through being like, oh my God, everybody's life is pristine right now. It's like to find those people who fuck with what I'm doing, or I fuck with what they're doing, and to give positive reinforcement. I think, what was it? Riverside Festival came out with their artists today or yesterday. I must have sent like 6 messages being like, I'm so fucking proud of you. Because sometimes that's what people need to hear in the run of a day, to be like, yo, you did something fucking great. Take that in for a second.
Are you able to do that for yourself?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. With myself, I'm like, I look at my planner and I've done everything that I was supposed to do for the day in my planner, and I'm like, what else could you have done? But that's the way that I work. The blessing and the curse, where I'm like, I'm up at 4 a.m. Like, I have a notepad like right next to my bed, so that if I can't sleep, I write. Or if I can't sleep and I have something on my mind, like, I'll write it down. I'll try to go back to bed. If I can't, I keep going. I keep going. Because for me, I don't think that my brain will ever stop, and it needs to exude what it needs to exude. If it means that I get great sleep for a month and then I don't sleep for a month, that's just how it happens,
Well, I mean, what you're saying there as well, though, it comes back to what we were saying about perspective. But I think the thing is, when you show this music to people who haven't heard it before, it's hard to describe it. They don't see all the kind of missed opportunities, if you know what I mean. They don't see all the areas where you can improve, which I do also think there is value in being able to see as a creator, even if it does kind of keep you up at night.
Yeah, of course. But at the end of the day, long after I'm gone, this music will be around. If at the end of the day I can say that was the best that I could do at the time, I'm happy. But also best believe that the next album will be more inventive in a way, or it might be different, or it might be this, or it might be that, because that's what I'm feeling at the time. And then I let myself, I don't confine myself by saying like, I need to make the next La La Land. I need to make the next blah, 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 blah. I'm like, what am I feeling at the time? How am I going to bring this idea and this story forward? And how do I make the best possible version of that as possible?